From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. My name is Jason and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we're regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How are you today, Joelle?
I'm okay. We've had a lot of technical difficulties getting started with this call, so I'm going to suggest that we forego the preamble and get straight on with the guest.
No.
No.
I mean, I've been getting a lot of pushback, I think, lately. Therese Granger mentioned today that, she was sharing an episode that we did with Francois recently. And she's like, skip the 6 minutes because that's when the podcast starts. I'm like, well, what about all the good stuff like that Joelle and I talk about at the beginning?
It's gold. All right. I was driving my car on the weekend. Mm-hmm. I'd been driving for about 10 minutes and suddenly out of nowhere a bee flew up out of under my seat.
Well, you said out of nowhere, but...
Well, I assume it was from under my seat. It came from somewhere.
Yeah.
In the car, but all the windows were up.
Yeah.
It wasn't, I hadn't been doing anything anywhere where, like, I wasn't in a field full of flowers or anything. I went from my apartment down to my car. Yes, I frolicked through a field of flowers on my way.
Yeah, like Sound of Music was kind of like a movie based on your life.
Basically my life, without the Nazis.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit terrifying.
Yeah.
Because I'm also a bit allergic to bees, so if it had stung me, it could have been problematic while I was driving, especially if it had stung me sort of around my face or neck area.
So did you pull over, open a window?
I was kind of in the middle of a road, so I wound my driver's side window down and just kind of leaned to the side, and it was trying to get out through the windscreen, which obviously, stupid bee, that's not how you get out of a car. But yeah, fortunately it just kind of found its way through to the window and escaped. But don't know how it came to get into the car, and I'm just glad that I didn't A, get stung in the neck, or B, crash, or both.
Yeah. We'll investigate further. We'll try and identify how the bee got in.
I don't know how you're going to do that.
I'm going to handball it like I do to most things. Ask Jack to
Jack is, I mean, if anybody can be a giant creep and find out things, it's Jack. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now we can introduce.
All right. Are you happy now?
Yeah, I'm happy now.
Okay.
All right. So this person has over 25 years' experience in the local government sector and has served on the board of several mental health and men's health charities. He's a director of local government professionals, New South Wales, and manager governance and customer service at Wollongong City Council. A warm welcome to the podcast, Todd Hopwood.
Hello. Thank you for having me, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, Todd, it's it's great having you on. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode to what we've done previously, but really excited to have you on, and hopefully we can have a bit of fun with this one.
So Todd, what podcast do you like to listen to?
I've got a list of about, like most things chaotic in my life, I've got 50 in my library, and I'll binge on 2 or 3 and then get sick of them and then binge. So at the moment, the 3 that I'm listening to are Getting Curious by Jonathan Van Ness, who's the host of Queer Eye. So he has a podcast that's just completely random. He thinks of a topic and just gets an expert. So he's had, someone killer whales on, history of World War II. You just mentioned bees before, about bees having sex, the sex life of bees. So there's a wide range. You never know what you're going to get in that. So that's a good zone out type educational podcast. I like A Bit of Optimism by Simon Sinek. That's just to keep the, into the not traditional, ways of management thinking and all that, and try not to fall in the traps of, particularly in my sector, of thinking like a public servant and, managing by policy and process. So keep resetting externally. And then I'm a bit of a US politics tragic, so I love a podcast called Useful Idiots, which I love the title. That's what drew it to me. Didn't know it was about politics.
Hmm.
But it's basically doesn't like either side of politics, which is, America's so polarizing. They've got topics every week, why Republicans suck, why Democrats suck. Isn't that weird? Isn't that interesting type stuff? So it's just, basically highlighting US politics and what it is in reality. So, very funny and very amusing. Yeah. So that's my current three.
It seems to be a lot more dramatic than Australian politics.
It does seem that way, yeah.
Mm.
Don't see anybody biting into an onion in US politics, though. A raw onion.
Or eating a sausage roll.
Sideways.
Yeah.
A hot dog, yeah.
Hot dog.
Well,
the big issues that
the big issues in Australia. How do you eat things properly?
Yeah.
Peel the onion first and probably cook it. Tell us about your professional career, please, Todd.
So I'm a career public servant, but I see that as a good thing. I fly the flag for public service as a worthwhile endeavour, and using our corporate and management skills to actually help the community. So I've found a home in local government. Been in local government about 25 years. Before that, leaving high school while doing uni, just odd jobs, bounced around, did retail management, worked in lots of different places, but then ended up in a government job and then in local government by accident. And that's how most people land in local government. It's either the biggest employer in town or you fall into it. And then in my career, like in governance and risk management, no one grows up going, I want to be a governance manager in a local council, because it's a very unique and boutique side of the business. We basically got to learn the skills of a company secretary as such. We run the corporate side of the business, but also dealing with politicians, councillors, mayors, and we've got like 150 pieces of legislation we have to run under. So being a jack of all trades and hopefully mastering some is the art of being a governance manager, because you've got to deal with the problems as they come up in any of those 150 areas. So I've progressed well in my sector, probably because I'm fairly good at being a jack of all trades, hopefully mastering some. Like I said, so I've worked in probably 6 or 7 councils, some small, some quite large, all metropolitan type councils, and very, very different each council, but a lot of things are the same too. So now I'm on the board of, as you said, of LG Professionals. That's the Professional Management Association, like a CPA equivalent in local government sort of things. On the board there, just trying to guide the sector in a professional way. And one of the things I stood to get on the board for was to push, as we're going to talk about today, about how we manage people and that stuff, and having workplaces that are caring in a mentally safe way for people. So that gave me a chance to sort of get into a different area to try and influence our sector a little bit. So that's the brief snapshot of my career so far.
Yeah, great. I'm a former public servant myself, so I certainly see the value and the importance of public service in Australia. So good on you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, reformed public servant.
Well, reform suggests that I am anti-public service, which is not the case.
Okay.
I'm just a former public servant.
Okay, we'll go with that. Potato. So, Todd, one of the things that drew my attention to you was your work on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn very frequently, as many people on the podcast will be aware of. I think most people who come across the podcast probably have found out about it because of LinkedIn. And, there's different ways that people can advocate for mental health, right? And you're using LinkedIn really successfully to do that. We'll talk about some of the posts that you've done and why they might be successful. But how did you find yourself, advocating for workplace mental health as a non-mental health expert?
It's a very strange journey. I didn't set out to be an advocate, or some people throw the term around, you're like a LinkedIn influencer, which is like a nightmare for me. Nothing against influencers, but I hate the term. It came about in a weird way. Like personally, I've been a lifetime carer for a family member with significant mental health challenges. Always had personal interests. raising a child who's got mental health challenges and going through hospital systems and different things like that. Through that process, I sort of created a stigma for it, didn't talk about it. Your kids, you've got to send the best message for them, so you don't talk to people about what they're going through or what you're going through, because you don't want people to look at your kids negatively. Not that anyone ever did. So I spent years and years not talking about the challenges my son was going through, challenges the family were going through. So you basically put up walls to everyone at work. Unfortunately, got very, very good at that. So you could have two distinct lives, chaos going on at home. But what I, after 10, 15 years, I had a marriage fall apart after that. It's probably from putting up all those barriers. So as a bit of a self journey, I thought I've got to work out how to not have those barriers up as an automatic thing in my life. So I came across a concept on LinkedIn. A gentleman by the name of Rob Stevenson in England talked about putting a what he calls a form score, writing your mental health score on the on a wall at work every day, which I still do every day. You can see I've got columns behind me with whiteboard paint on them, so I graffiti on there, and I just started doing that as a concept to bring down my own barriers, to actually acknowledge to people when you're having a bad day. I just advised when I write a low score, because I've got a great team. They'll come in and, how you're going and rally around you, which, some people know that's the last thing you want when you're going through things as a male with the instinct of putting up the barriers. So it sort of started like that. And then a progression from that is, maybe I should post about it online, because I was trying to, how can I be more open about it? But I'm an introvert at the same time and don't really want to talk to people. So I want to be open about it, but in a selfish way, not have them talk back to me about what I'm going through. As a first step, that was why I got onto LinkedIn and started talking about, challenges in workplace. And at first it was, I'd talk about just straight up, mental health challenges, like, the difficulties of an introvert in the workplace, and they were quite minor, and 50 people would look at a post type stuff, but I was doing it as a outlet type way, because I was trying to get myself to be more honest in the workplace as well about those things. And over time, that just sort of developed. I talked about different topics. Follow accounts started to follow from that, and people putting lots of comments on there, and then chatting to me through DMs about challenges they're going through. So you could see it was starting to have a positive impact, and people were getting help. After reading some of my posts, so that just sort of spurred me on to do that, not to be a advocate as such, but just to get that general messaging going. That was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And then that sort of evolved into probably about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, actually posting regularly. I just did it as things came up, or if I went for a run and I was, thought of something, or I saw something in a workplace I didn't like, I'd post about it. But then about 18 months ago, I decided to post 2 or 3 times a week and just think about topics and things I'm seeing in workplace, but also just straight mental health posts as well, from a lived experience and a cared experience type stuff. So it's sort of bounced around and evolved into a thing now. Now I get invited onto podcasts, and I've been invited to speak at conferences, which is interesting. I see it as part of my development, being an introvert by nature. So I have to be an extrovert at work, but I love to just turn all that off and happily not talk to people for a day or two, go bush and hike and all that sort of stuff. So I still see it as part of my development to be out there and talking about these things, but it doesn't get easier. So I've been putting my score on the wall for 4 years, and if I put a 4 out of 10 up there, I still dread, all right, here come the nice people, which sounds weird. But then I've got to talk about my stuff. So that I do it more, and I challenge myself to do it. But interestingly, that hasn't got much more comfortable. So I've got the barriers down. I choose to talk about it, but I'm still not comfortable. It's not what I do. Some people are quite, they open about their emotions and all that. So I do it, and it's hard work for me sometimes. But it's I choose to do it because I had lifelong friends at former workplaces where I worked for 15 years who said, I didn't know. When I started talking about, you had all this going on for 15 years in your life, and difficult circumstances, and we would have helped. No one would have had any issues. So it sort of made me think: is there people out there the same that no one told me there was a stigma about mental health. I didn't have a bad experience after talking about it. I just didn't do it. So, and then when I started talking online, and then did a talk at Are You OK Day at work, and 10 people came up afterwards and said, going through the exact same thing, and it's good to see, people connected. And then how did you get help for your kids and that sort of stuff? It sort of went, all right, I've started a thing now, and it sort of became a journey to try and improve mental health awareness, and then sort of evolved into very much the workplace angle. That's where I see, I'm not a mental health expert. I've had 20 plus years of lived and caring experience, but not trained in any way on psychology or anything like that. But it became, I could see from my experience and awareness of how things in general impact on people, just how damaging workplaces can be, how damaging, programs with good intentions but bad delivery, all of that sort of stuff, and just, sort of started calling out just better ways of doing things. Not saying I'm a perfect manager or my workplace is a perfect workplace. Some of the things we post about are just things that got wrong myself, and you see impacts and all that. So it's just sort of evolved now to be a not quasi, it's about the impacts of the workplace, and they're the sort of posts that do take off the most. You can do stuff with views and just say, bosses are horrible, and just go, don't we all hate bosses? And that's an easy way to get. There's a series, a cohort of discontent in there. So in LinkedIn, but I try and make all of my posts about positive actions or what a manager can do to take away an issue or an impact on staff, or just make them aware of impacts. Some of them, I just talk about the impacts of how introverts get along in the office and things they need just to get by. Flexible working, talking about flexible working and how it can, there's the in-office, out-office debate, but someone who actually has to have a deep breath after every conversation with someone, the benefits of working home for that person can far outweigh, the value for a manager just being able to see their boss. So, just trying to get people to look at different ways of thinking about mental health in the workplace, other than just someone might have a mental health issue. What's our program say in response? Type stuff, to actually think about situations, not programs as such.
Yeah, and Todd, that's a real interesting journey. I know many people who have that lived experience of either themselves or, like you say, you've also got that family lived experience as well of mental health challenges, and they might get very focused on that. Where you've obviously traversed is thinking, well, that's my experience. I can see that when we manage work better, then that can actually have a positive impact, regardless of whether people are going through mental health challenges or not, right? Yep. So it's really, really cool. I mean, that's what our podcast is all about, right? Let's make work better, because we know then it benefits everyone, regardless of where they sit on the mental health continuum. Interesting, you brought up Rob Stevenson. I've met Rob over in London before. He's a very enigmatic character. He is a bit of an introvert as well, despite how public he is about different things. But I think you might have beaten him to the punch, because I've seen Rob just recently starting to talk about the importance of good work for mental health and getting off that individual focus of like being more reactive. So even though you started following him and maybe had a bit of inspiration from him, I think you might have beaten him to starting to think about the systemic drivers of mental health rather than the personal factors.
Yeah, and I think that's just because I'm quite analytical. So because I'm looking at it, all right, a bit too analytically, how to get my barriers down, and mine was about the workplace. So that made me start critically looking at why you do certain things in the workplace, from stigma purposes, or why you wouldn't talk about certain mental health things. And then that made me think, all right, what's the management behaviour that I might have expected for that to occur, even though I didn't cop that, that type of stigma or poor treatment by management in any way at all. But it made me think, when I thought about the type of thing I was worried about, I then can see that actual behaviours in different organisations and all that. So it sort of inspired by Rob, and then fell by accident into an area where there's a lot of improvement that can happen in workplaces, and there's lots of people doing great work in that space now of not just getting a wellbeing policy and putting it up on the wall type stuff, that actually trying to work out what does that mean in every workplace. It's different everywhere.
Yeah, and this is what we're trying to get across to people too, right? You don't need to be an organizational psychologist to be able to positively influence how work is designed for yourself or people that you work with. A lot of it's really common sense. And I think as we talked through some of your posts that have resonated really well with people on LinkedIn, it's just good management practices, really, right? Like, that's it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not like working out the solutions, not the hard part. It's the delivering it genuinely. Some of the things I talk about aren't, they're not groundbreaking stuff, but if I don't actively think about it, I can fall in the trap of not doing those exact same things myself, even though I'm conscious of it. So that's been a good thing about posting is, I use it sometimes as, I don't say why I put a post up, but it's a reminder for myself, or I might have tripped up in something and I go, right, I'll put a post up at some point about that negative I've seen in the workplace. And sometimes it's something that I've made a decision or implemented something, and then you haven't seen an impact on someone, then you go, all right, that's something that needs to be a self called out, but called out for other people to be mindful of issues.
Well, Todd, we've had a chat with you before this recording to identify some of your posts that I guess have done particularly well. And the good thing is we can see there's a common theme around designing good work that's good for people. So what we'd like to do is to explore 5 of the more popular posts that you've done, talk about the main message, and we'll kind of think about why it might have resonated with people.
All right. So the first one we're going to talk about is what makes employees stay. And so the image you shared for that was a text-based image that says employees stay when they're paid well, mentored, challenged, promoted, involved, appreciated, valued, empowered, on a mission, and trusted. So what was the what was the intent behind sharing that one?
This one came out, and I should say my post come to me, I run at 4:35 in the morning, and an idea will flash in my head. So, and sometimes it evolves on a run, sometimes it sits there for a couple of months. But this one was during the the employee crisis. When anyone post COVID couldn't get an employee, people were leaving, the Great Resignation was on, and we were having a conversation at work about the resignation. We were talking in our senior leadership team about some management roles were getting advertised, and they couldn't get applicants. There was 2 applicants, and I'd just advertised a role in my team and broke away from the corporate template of how we write the ads. I think it was for a customer experience manager, and just talked all about are they passionate about people, about their staff. I put mental health into the ad because customer service staff, are on the front line and cover all the time. So everyone knows what customer service is or customer experience is. I didn't need to talk to those people in that sector about, do you know how to, do first call resolution, or journey mapping. They've got those skills. So I talked in that senior leadership meeting about 100% about, talking to people and saying, do you want to come and work for us? We value these things. And what I got 100 applicants for a management job when we were getting, 3 or 4, and only 2 are any good for other ones. And the difference to me was just, I talked about how we did mental health. I'm passionate about it. I want someone who's passionate about it and is going to look after their team, number one. And that's the biggest thing I need, was that dynamic from a person. So that's what prompted the thoughts. And, I was just scrolling through LinkedIn, and it was an image, one of those ones you see shared around 1,000 times. I saw it about 10 different times in my feed in about 2 or 3 days, and just shared it on, and then did a couple of paragraphs of my own thoughts about why it's important. And that one just went nuts. Probably right time, right moment. Never can quite tell why they go nuts. That one got about 6 million views. But it was just right in that point when everyone was talking about, great resignation, and people were frustrated about getting called back into the office. Do they come back in, not in? They're frustrated with employers who were thinking in the old way of thinking, and it wasn't meeting with staff. And so, I just wanted to put out there that about if people will stay, if they like a job, they'll stay. If they like the people, they stay. If they feel safe, they'll stay. You won't have a great resignation. You'll lose some people always if they're talent, and they get better opportunities. But if you've got a massive resignation on, then you've got a problem bigger than a great resignation out there. You've got something that's not making them want to stay.
Yeah, and so that sort of really comes back to reframing the way that employers view their employees, and I guess some of that psychological contract concept as well around the non-transactional aspects of the employment relationship, and what do you expect from your employees, if you're wanting them to have things like loyalty and commitment and engagement with the work, and that sort of, you want them to go above and beyond. That needs to be reciprocated from the side of the employer as well. And so, there's, I think, a lot of that that change in thinking or mindset from the employer's perspective is still continues to be a challenge in some areas more than others.
Yep. And also, as something my wife and I talk about regularly, I'm not a person that she's 100% trust people until, I'm a no trust. You prove you can do me wrong and you don't, all right, I start to trust you now. That comes from that barriers approach. So I sort of take that in as an employer. We have to earn the trust of the employees. That's not the standard. We've got to, you're still here today, we pay their wages, we've got a job, like that, they should be loyal. But if we haven't actually done anything for them over and above a wage, because you can get a wage anywhere, you can get a job anywhere. If you haven't done something extra, why should they be loyal and trust us? So we've got to be at the front and earn the trust, because that's how I just personally see trust working. I don't give it first. That might be a flaw in some people's minds, but I bring that in the workplace, that I want to, like even there in an advert, I want to say right up front, this is the commitment I'm making, and then hopefully I can deliver on most of it, if not all of it, but actually not just wait for loyalty to come to you and give people bonuses or use pay or reward structures to keep them there. Just, I want people to want to work in my team.
Yeah, and there's some key things there, right, that we know from the work design literature are valued by people, right? So beyond being just paid well, which, should
work for a while.
Yeah.
That's just the baseline, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Till you put the credit card limit up to match it, and then it's useless again.
Yeah, but that's, it comes under reward and recognition as well, right? You want to feel like you're being adequately rewarded for the value that you're delivering to your employer. But things like being mentored, so that idea of getting support from colleagues or from a supervisor to help you to develop personally. People like challenge, and people want a varying degrees of challenge promoted, so that career progression, and that's something we've talked about before, particularly with, it was Candice, when we're talking about technology jobs. Like a lot of them, there's not a clear kind of career trajectory. You're a developer and you could be a developer for like 10 years, for instance. So, people want to see that there's some sort of progression in their jobs. Being empowered, so being able to, I guess, have autonomy to make decisions, we know is important for people's well-being as well. And that feeling of being trusted, like you were talking about, it's trust goes both ways, but can you, as a manager, earn the trust and give trust to people to make the right choices? Yeah. So I can see why it would resonate, because that really is describing an optimal kind of working environment.
Yeah, what's interesting, obviously, that's the most viral post I've had, but it was, I think, like you said, it's probably the most simplest. It was just staying. This is what employees like, and I don't think that, like I said, there's nothing groundbreaking in any of that, but those things do drop off the radar or they get, not deliberately, but, budget cuts or pressures or, there's too much on at work. So the care drops and, you forget about to recognise your people or have a simple morning tea to say, well done on a project. Over time, if enough of those little drop-offs happen, you can go from good to not so good in the eyes of your team. So it's just, reminding that the simple things work sometimes. Not in every area, but yeah.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishdx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode. Yeah, and most of those, like, sometimes we have clients who are worried about, if we go down this process of psychosocial risk management, this sounds like it's going to be really costly to make these changes because we're talking about systemic changes. But a lot of it comes down to, what the leader themselves can directly influence. And most of these things are things that the leader, if they're aware of, can do something about without requiring any, budget or permission, if you like.
Yeah, certainly don't need permission. Yeah.
So look, the one that really brought your post to my attention actually was the next one we'll talk about. So I think we've been connected for a while, but I saw this one just going nuts soon after you posted it. And it was definitely something topical at the time or something that we talk to regularly. So basically, again, like most of your posts, it was an image with some text in it. And it said, when praying for that job, also pray for a working environment that won't lead you to burnout, depression, and regret. Which we thoroughly agree with. But what was going through your mind when you decided to post that one?
This one came from a conversation with a connection on LinkedIn. They sent me a message and we'd chatted back and forth for a week or two. And they were in a difficult workplace that didn't have the best culture, slightly damaging, and they were going, should I stay and advocate and do what you do to try and change the joint, or should I leave? Which was a vexed question, because if we all, the post and the text sort of leads to, if it's toxic, get out. But if everyone does that, then everything stays toxic. So it's not as neat of that. So I was thinking about that for a couple of weeks, and then in the text I put in the post, which was the main idea I wanted to get across, was about interviewing an employer. So if you do choose to leave a toxic environment, and I've done that. I've left environments that were great for my career but were damaging to mental health and didn't see a path where it was going to improve in the short term. If you don't just want to leave and then go into the next one, it's exactly the same, and it'll probably be more damaging because you had hope and then it gets crushed. So, I talked about in the post about having confidence to, when they say you got anything else to question, and this may go the wrong way, and if you knuckle down pretty hard on some questions that aren't, have you got a wellbeing program, but knuckle down to get to the nuts and bolts of what are they doing underneath that, having the guts to ask that. And I put in some signs of toxic culture in the post that I thought would show up in those answers. I did get lots of comments back from that, and so people say, you might not get the job if you ask like that. And I sort of like, well, if they are super touchy on those questions, they probably aren't doing the good things underneath. So so nothing's perfect, but it was about that dilemma of staying versus going, and then how do you not just walk into the same thing in the next workplace, which is very hard in an interview. They're selling their best thing, so a lot of people use those questions at the end of the interview to try and go, what makes me look best for and if you ever do interviews, you see, they're trying to look like the best possible applicant. talking about budget, or I see your challenges in your strategic plan stuff, that's all well and good. But if you want the workplace for you, you need to ask some questions about, what's underneath the hood. Is there just an "are you okay" day and some fruit in the kitchen, or is there an environment that cares? So that was that one. What that was about.
Yeah, I like that idea of the reverse interview, right? Here's my 3 references. Can I have 3 references, as in employees, that I can talk to about what it's like to work here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That wouldn't
unfortunately,
go down well in most places.
yeah, well, unfortunately for Joelle, there was
you didn't have 3 employees for me to talk to.
There was only developers, and they couldn't tell you too much.
No.
You're the first psych hire.
Not the most articulate of.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that doesn't go too far when you're the first psych hire.
No.
Right. It was a good pitch.
It was a pitch. It wasn't an interview. And look, I think I guess the other side to that is, you might not get the job if you're asking those questions. If you're in a position where you're desperate for any job, then that's probably a valid concern and something that you might want to temper how far you go with that questioning. But if you're in a position where you're just looking for something better than where you currently are, then you don't want to get that job if it's going to be damaging to your mental health. I think that's, you can consider that as a bullet dodged potentially.
Yeah. And I do get lots of, now that posts are getting more popular, people, send messages about their particular situation. I explain that a lot of my posts are at the edge to spark debate, and always make sure that you look after yourself and your family first, your income, and if you have to tough it out, then I'm not a fan of resilience programs from employers, sort of thing. But if you're in a tough spot and that's your only job and that's your income and you need that level, then you work on those tips, but then work out as you get safer and safer with your basic needs, you can then start bringing these ideas in, either to challenge your employer or to be on the scout for what to look for when you head into a new employer.
Yeah. All right. So the next one that we're going to talk about is the 10 phrases that great leaders say. And so those 10 phrases are: thank you, I don't know, don't worry, how can I help, great work, I made a mistake, what do you think, you did a great job, how can we improve, and we are lucky to have you.
Have you heard any of those before, Joelle?
I often hear you say don't worry.
You definitely haven't heard me say number 6.
Number 6, I made a mistake. That's true. That's true. I think I've probably heard most of those from you, Jason.
Oh, that's good.
So tell us, where did this one come from?
This came about. This is one of the ones from memory. Came on a jog. I'd seen a similar post on LinkedIn a couple of months before with 10 different things, and I saved that image on my phone, and then I was thinking about my own list, and I was on a jog, and I had a family member that had an illness, and my general manager went out of the way to heard about it, gave a buzz on the weekend to touch base and all that. So it hasn't got any of those phrases in there, but just reached out. It just brought me back to that post of, what is a leader, and it was mainly to convey that it's not a great manager. It's not about people who get the project done on budget, get us the most bonuses, give us the most pay. It's about those connection things. And the things that jumped out in my mind that I wanted to emphasize were, communication and confidence, and how saying I don't know can actually give confidence to your team. If you're in a challenging situation where you genuinely don't know, well, I find it this way. Sometimes it's a bit comforting for the boss to go, I don't know either. Yeah, you follow in with some other stuff. What do we do about it? Let's look at things. But some of those vulnerable statements of I don't know, or I made a mistake, or those sort of things can be the most elements where you build trust. You see your boss be vulnerable and you connect as a real person. It was interesting. This post is one of the ones I got the most negative comments on, probably from possibly managers who manage in a certain style, going, that's a rubbish list. Why should I say those things? Why should I concede to an employee when I'm wrong? And stuff like I sort of make a practice try not to engage with the comments. I don't. That's 99% positive, but I just do it to spark debate and have a think about it. And main reason being is I don't know anything about someone's workplace. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to comment on how they manage or anything like that. I'm not going to try and correct anyone about anything. So I always try and avoid the comments other than trying to say thank you. I used to try and say thank you on every comment, but that's got a bit silly now with some of them. If you get 1,000 comments on this, so I've had to give up on that routine. But that one was just, it came about wanting to, without actually saying it, that I had or still have a great general manager. And it just made me think about what I like to see in a leader. And you'll see 100 posts a day almost about that on LinkedIn and different things where people chat about leadership and that. So I think it's just that one took off because the words felt real, I guess, and connected with people. One thing I sort of think I think like an employee, not a manager. So I'm like tier 3 in my organisation in the senior leadership team, but I see myself as not an antagonist to management, but I question just standard management decisions, and standard approaches and all that, and push back on that sort of stuff. So whether that's a layover from being the rambunctious, rebellious teenager that 30 years later haven't got rid of, or whether it's that employee mindset, but just trying to go, all right, let's not accept how we are. Let's try and redesign. So that one was a bit of a homage to my boss.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. One day you'll write a homage to me, Joel.
Seems unlikely.
I didn't tag my boss in it, so.
Just anytime I post anything about good leadership now, Jason's going to be there in the comments saying thank you, Joelle, for this homage to me.
That's one way to do it. Just always say thank you to every
Jason will just
talking about me.
Anything positive that I ever write, Jason will be like, thank you.
Yeah, I don't mind people critiquing or challenging anything I post, but if they're not actually moving the conversation forward constructively, it's a block and delete for me. So I don't want to engage with those people. They can go and engage with others.
Yeah, it's good. Debate's good. Like I put it out there, and there's some regular people who connect on my posts a lot and look at it in different angles, and it's particularly valuable because you look at an angle even on my post and I didn't actually think of that, and so it's something else I can put in my toolkit. So all that stuff's good, different viewpoints, all that sort of stuff. Except if someone's toxic, see you later.
I don't like arguing with stupid. They always beat me with experience. So look, the next post you had was around finding joy, meaning and purpose at work. So the post again is a text one. Surprise, surprise. It says a good salary can motivate you every payday. So that's fortnightly for us. But a good work culture and sense of purpose can motivate you every day. That one did quite well as well, right?
It's 500,000 views.
Yeah. So what do you, first of all, again, what was going through your head when you posted this one? And then secondly, I guess, why do you think it resonated so well with people?
I know this one, I know exactly what was going through my head. And it's probably the longest, because, I put up an image with some text. It's probably the longest of actual text behind it. The story is probably 6 or 7 paragraphs. I was in contract renegotiation. So all the things flowing through my mind, when you're doing because I'm on a term contract and we roll over type thing in senior leadership, all the things, your challenge, is this what I'm looking for and all that sort of stuff. Because really when the offer comes, and local government's not that sophisticated, here's the offer, here's the money, that sort of stuff. So the contract itself isn't complex, but, I took a month or two and, to make my decision on it, because I'm thinking about, environment and workplace, and can I keep, I'm not in the human resources space, but can I keep making an impact here? And so I've moved from happy outlier. When I started here 5 years ago, I was the guy talking about mental health and well-being, but not in that space. And it was, that's just Todd. Todd talks about that, and then influence it, and then programs have happened, and I get called in to managers ask me questions on how to help with issues like that. I try and redirect them back to HR. But so moved from a influence to actually really shaking the organisation. And so, my motivation was what actually brings me joy and purpose at work. And I was challenging myself in the sense that doing governance, doing legal stuff, doing politics stuff wasn't why I wanted to work here at Wollongong Council and renew my contract. I love doing that stuff. I'm good at that stuff. But the fact that we've got a long way to go, but we're having momentum in this space, trying to look at how we look after employees, how we look at different elements of that, how we design workplaces, work jobs, all that sort of stuff that's starting to be a bit more sophisticated thinking. We haven't built our solutions yet, but the thinking's started. So being in an environment where that thinking is happening and we're challenging ourselves to look at work and actually, how we design work, and thinking about when we put something in, what's the impact on the employee, not for their job, but for the employee. So that thinking started. So that's what was in my mind when I talked about that post, because I'd have corporate opportunities that I could pursue if I wanted to. So the draw of public service. We talked about public servants before. I love that stuff. But then being in a public service organisation where I can help people who are also public servants is what kept me. So then there was a rather long-winded post with lots of text in there about what I think employees are looking for, what creates connection to workplace, what makes you feel like you belong, and talk about flexibility and all that sort of stuff. So it was more an expanded post on that one we talked about, when praying for stuff in the workplace. It was sort of an expanded thought, and I think it was a couple of months on from that one. So it's just an evolution of the thinking in my own mind sort of stuff. But so contract negotiations can spark. It's occasionally. I did resign and stay, so I should gave you that.
Clearly. It does make a lot of sense though, and something that I've written about previously or spoken about before, which is, I guess, up until about 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, people were looking for good work-life balance. Like, I'll work hard, but then I want a good recovery period, or I want to enjoy myself on my time off. I think more and more workers are actually looking for the time they spend at work to actually be meaningful and feel like actually I am providing value. I'm not just going there to punch in and out, and then my life starts after I finish work. It's more, if I'm going to be spending so much of my life at work, then it needs to be valuable time, and it's more so than, it's not just about getting the paycheck so I can enjoy my life outside of work. So I think, I can see why that would resonate so strongly.
It reminds me of if listeners who have watched Parks and Recreation, the difference between the Leslie Knope character and the Jerry Gergich character, in terms of how they derive meaning from the work that they do. And for Leslie, it's about being the public servant and what she can give to the community, and what she wants to be able to achieve in her career that way. And for Jerry, it's about that his work enables him to be able to provide for his family and have a vacation with them every year and be home for dinner every night and all of that sort of thing. So we've kind of got these two opposite sides of the coin in terms of meaningfulness from work. And I think a lot of the time we really focus on the Leslie side of the meaningfulness and we forget to think about the Jerry side of the meaningfulness. But it's an important distinction to remember.
Yeah, that is true, because the first thing I did look at in contract was the dollars, so we can't discount that.
Yep.
It's all important.
It is. All right, so the last one that we're going to talk about today is a more of a visual one, and it's the impact of back-to-back meetings on brain function, showing the ECG monitoring over a 4-meeting period. So tell us about that one.
So this is my favourite post, or this is a post I most wanted to go viral It's, had like 250,000 views, which is good. So lots of impact, lots of people saw it. But this is the one, if I could pick for 6 million people to see, this would have been it, but it proves you can't always pick it. This one was just about some research Microsoft did about, and it was mainly Teams meetings, the back-to-back, going from one to another. And like you said, they put ECG monitors on and mentioned and measured people's stress and brain activity and all that from back-to-backs. And it showed really well what a lot of us feel, during COVID and we had back-to-back meetings. You seemed more tired at 5 o'clock than you did, even if you had back-to-back meetings in the office previously. The back-to-back meetings isn't new, but particularly that Zoom element. And it showed if you didn't have a break, the significant amount of stress on the brain, the drop in brain function and productivity and all that. So that was just research that really, struck a chord with me. In our teams, we've been setting our meetings to start 5 minutes past the hour and end 5 minutes before the hour, that sort of stuff, to try and get breaks. So we were exploring in this space anyway, and then saw this research and wanted to share it out there to say that there is actually an impact of having back-to-back meetings, and try and get that message out there of having the 10 minutes in between. And also, I re-put up a similar sort of post a couple of months later, but to talk about, to take the same research and talk about it from an introvert's perspective. They need the 10 minutes sometimes just to go and whatever it is that recenters them, stare at the wall, not talk it to anyone. But for everyone else, going to get a cup of coffee, you come back and you're more productive in the meetings, you talk more. So significant more value from the meeting. So this one's probably the most science-based ones that genuinely try and get workplaces to stop having back-to-back meetings. It's I put in the post, it's just a stupid idea. I did cop some criticism from some people for using the word stupid. So I was trying to demonstrate at a point out there. So language probably not the greatest, but it is in our benefit not to have back-to-back meetings. Like we try here to do that. I block out every lunch break for a mental health walk. And one of the challenges that grapples with here, the senior staff can't find a gap for a meeting, and 12 o'clock, goes, there's that meeting, and it's with the tiers above you. Do you push back and go, it's my lunch break? So I don't know if I'm at that stage in life yet of telling the general manager, but and we talk regularly about these type of things. So if he listens in, get ready for it, Greg. I'm trying to work up to the spot where I go, all right, you want me at lunchtime, we're walking. Let's go outside. I was going to walk, so you're coming with me. So it was just about, putting out there that what we already knew, if you have back-to-back meetings, it just feels horrible. But there actually is science to say it is horrible. And, we don't have good meetings. That was a very rambly answer, but anyway.
It's okay. Seems like something that a technology solution could help with, like from a Microsoft or whoever you're.
Oh, I like actually. I have noticed that in Microsoft bookings, you can put in like a space in between meetings. So like you've got like protected space, so people can't just book back to back. Remind me to turn that on. Because I do share my calendar booking regularly, and I get people go, oh, there's a gap in there, I'm going to put it in there, and then I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah, that's why I've put blocks in for me to have a lunch break as well.
Yeah.
Because people are booking from the public calendar. They just look for a time that matches, especially with time zones and stuff as well. You'll get somebody who it doesn't even realise they're booking at your lunch time. Yeah,
I got to use that. I definitely feel better after having a break in between meetings. I remember talking to Kat Page about that as well, not necessarily related to back-to-back meetings, but just that what you call it, the third space, or so you got work, you got home, and then you just need that time to turn off and defrag your brain a little bit before engaging. So whether that's going from work to family or vice versa, or going from meeting to meeting, it's breaks are good to kind of reset. I guess all of your stress hormones within your body.
Yep. Yeah. One tip we've been using settings, and you can put a default that it starts at 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late. Finishing them 5 minutes early doesn't tend to work. If you make it 11 to 11:25, the talkers will just take you to 11:30. So we're shifting now and starting them at like 11:05, and you genuinely get that 5 minutes. The 5 minutes at the end, that's a fallacy. You'll never get that unless there's 5 introverts in the room. But the talkers will take that space because it's there, because they're not busy till 11:30, so they'll take it. So starting meetings later or at a weird time creates a block that no one will come and take your 12 to 12:10 break from you. So just use weird timings, and it self-protects it.
Someone out there is going, challenge accepted.
That'll happen. I'll get a 10-minute invite.
Nice one. Well, Todd, it's been fun chatting through some of these things. Obviously, you found yourself in this role of mental health advocate, and we love the focus of your advocacy, which is around making work good for people versus just focusing on individuals and symptoms, which many people do. So I guess big picture thinking. What are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health?
If we're going really blue sky thinking that we don't have workplace mental health, it's just health, sick leave. If someone breaks a leg on the weekend, it's just you get on with it. They've got a broken leg, and you know what's happening. It's just part of normal conversation. That's a fair way off, and that's about people's individual reactions. But how we design our workplaces and how we design our policies and how we react to things can speed up that in any given workplace to get to that scenario where it's just normal. And some organisations have specifically go out of their way to have mental health policies and such. You don't have to tell us why if you need a doona day, that type of thing to try and, you always could have a doona day. You just didn't have to tell your boss what it was, but to try and make it normal in conversation. So I think that's the end state we want to get us to, the difference between someone, having a mental health challenge that might come up and down, and they work through it all their life is no different. Someone has a recurrent illness, but we treat them very differently in workplaces. And like structurally, there's some things we need to do. We have sick leave policies that are aimed at incident recovery to a certain point, and it may not be full recovery. If it's a workplace injury, then you get alternate duties, but it's about recovery. And here, it's not about you have a life cycle. So particularly in public service organisations where we've got very strict policies and rigid things, the designing, how we handle mental health in a policy setting to allow for the fact that it may not be a recovery model. People go up and down. They may go through challenges for life. How do we actually deal with those from a policy setting? And what's going to be hard, particularly in public organisations, is the key is going to be less policy, less prescription, more flexibility, autonomy for managers to deal with it, and work with their employees for an individual solution. So, so in my area, like we're very traditional, very policy based. So that could be a hard part. But prescription's not the answer to us working with mental health and making mental health workplaces safer. It's about individuals. Every individual is different, so we've got to be able to design a workplace that works for the individual. So you can't do that from HR, you can't do that from head office or from the C-suite down. That's the 1 and 2 up can have the most impact on their work environment and their workplace. That's where the on the run design as such has got to happen. That's where the real success will be, in my mind.
Yeah, lots of work to do, but I concur with your thoughts about that being like the gold standard. If we can get leaders more capable of making those decisions closer to where the employee is and their quality of work, that's where I think we'll make the greatest gains. But we've got a long road ahead of us.
And do you have any words of advice for listeners who would like to advocate for workplace mental health?
I've been asked this before, like people on LinkedIn will send a message, how can I advocate in my workplace? Just find your own voice and why it's important to you. So if you know why do you want to advocate for it? That'll often tell you the avenue to lobby in. So I wanted, I spoke about my journey before about how I interacted with my workplace and had mental health issues with management, didn't want to fully disclose, for trust issues and all that. So that's when, all right, I've got to start, advocating in that work management space. So in professional associations, at our conferences, and in a professional setting at work. But the important thing is to start with, don't copy some of the people on LinkedIn, me included, that go, oh, vulnerability's good. Yeah, vulnerability's okay if you're safe. Be in a good spot. If you're vulnerable, it comes with issues. So using vulnerability as an advocacy approach has worked for a lot of people, but it's not something you shouldn't walk into lightly, because people will talk to you about what you're going through and you may not be ready for that. But more importantly, they'll come and talk to you about what they're going through too. So you've got to be ready for that element of it. So the biggest point for me is advocate about what you're passionate about in the forum where you want to make that change, but always think of your personal safety. So if you think management's not ready for it, talk to colleagues, try and get groundswell going more than going head on at management, because we've said a couple of times, your safety, your income, your mental health are the bedrock for you to go on. And then when it's safe, find ways to go out from there. So, yeah.
Good advice. Thank you, Todd.
Well, Todd, it has been fun talking to you. I was hoping it would be a fun episode. So we'll definitely put some links out to some of these posts as part of the show notes, so our listeners can check out what we've been talking about. But I'm assuming that people can reach out to you on LinkedIn if they're interested in continuing the conversation.
Yeah, certainly. Reach out and have a chat. With that, Kate has said a couple of times, just a happy observer at life. I'm not an expert, so I can agree with you about the problems, but solutions, they're a bit harder, but we can bash those into shape.
Yeah, nice one. Well, Todd, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Okay, listeners, that brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, we do record these when we have the conversations with our guests like Todd, so you can catch these videos on the Flourish DX YouTube channel. You'll also find some of the best bits from the conversations that we have on the Flourish DX LinkedIn page. While you're on LinkedIn, obviously, you'll find Todd over there, and Joelle and myself frequent there, probably more than what we should. So feel free to reach out to us too if you want to continue the conversation. But that's it for today. We'll catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety Podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.